not one of the 72 vaccines that are now mandated for our children have ever undergone a placebo-controlled trial prior to licensure.
I hate to say it, but you're about to learn more about this topic than the Secretary of Health and Human Services appears to know. Kennedy is misleading you about two things: claiming there are 72 vaccines, and being straight up wrong about placebo controls. First, if you're a parent, you may wonder where he's getting the idea that children get 72 vaccines, because our daughter certainly hasn't gotten anywhere near 72 injections, and she's getting every recommended vaccine. Kennedy is doing such extreme mental gymnastics, I literally had to sit down with Excel open to try to reverse engineer his math. It turns out I think he's double and triple and quintuple counting vaccines. For example, the DTaP vaccine protects against 3 pathogens, diphtheria, tetanus, and pertussis, all in one shot, and it's given over the course of 5 doses during childhood. He counts that as 15 vaccines. And when it comes to a safety study, you would do a study on that single vaccine product in that schedule of doses. That's one finding. That's not 15 separate findings. More importantly, Kennedy is just wrong about placebo testing. The MMR vaccine is a good example. It's a combination of protection against measles, mumps, and rubella, all in one shot. And before it was developed, there were already 3 separate individual shots for those viruses, each of which was tested separately against saline controls in their clinical studies. The study of the combined MMR vaccine did not test against a saline placebo, but it was tested against the combination of those 3 individual shots, which each had been already tested against saline. So it's building upon predicate data and comparisons for safety against saline controls. It's kind of like saying A equals B and B equals C. Therefore, A equals C. But the second key point here is even more important. In the decades of use of these vaccines, their safety and efficacy has been studied in massive research study at the scales of millions and millions of children. That means they could detect risks that are so infrequent you would never see them in a clinical trial anyway. For example, a period of increased risk for bruising that in some children may occur around 2 to 6 weeks after the MMR vaccine. When I say some children, I mean around 1 in 40,000. And among those, it's usually mild and self-resolving, but rarely it can be serious. You would never see that in a clinical study, even if you had saline controls, even if you had thousands of children. My point is that the safety data for childhood vaccines are incredibly closely monitored through these reporting systems, and they have been for decades, such that if there are these types of risks and they do happen, they get noticed and they get studied. No expert will tell you that vaccines have 0 side effects. The discussion is one of weighing benefits versus risks, which is more nuanced than is acceptable on social media these days. But to say that we know very little about the risk profiles of these products, like Kennedy's department said this week, because they think that the clinical studies didn't include appropriate placebos, that betrays both ignorance of the original clinical study design and the predecessor clinical studies, and also, more importantly, ignorance of the decades of post-licensure safety data in millions of children since then.